The cameras were rolling on a Tuesday afternoon taping of Family Feud when Grace Okafor grabbed the microphone out of Steve Harvey's hand and turned to face her husband Marcus, who stood frozen behind the podium with his family. "I need to say something," she said, her voice shaking so hard the audio crew scrambled to adjust levels. Marcus's face went white. His mother reached for his arm. His brother stepped back. 200 audience members went silent, and Steve Harvey, a man who had hosted over 4,000 episodes of this show, stood completely still. Because in 17 years behind that podium, no contestant had ever taken the microphone from him. What Grace Okafor said next would be replayed over 400 million times across every platform on the internet. It would make grown men weep in comment sections across 47 countries. It would force Steve Harvey to do something he had never done on live television: shut down an entire taping, call a stranger on the phone, and rewrite the rules of his own show. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen. It started 7 months earlier, on March 14, 2023, in a 3-bedroom house in Decatur, Georgia, where Marcus Okafor taught 8th grade math at a public school that couldn't afford new textbooks. Grace worked the night shift as a registered nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital. They had 3 children, twins Elijah and Isaiah, age 9, and a daughter named Hope, who had just turned 4. Every Sunday morning, the Okafor family sat in the 3rd pew at Greater Emmanuel Baptist Church, and every Sunday evening, Marcus graded papers at the kitchen table while Grace packed lunches for Monday. Their neighbors called them the quietest family on Birchwood Lane. Nobody called them broken. Nobody called them desperate. Nobody knew that Marcus Okafor had been living with a secret for 2 years and 11 months that was slowly killing him from the inside out. The secret had nothing to do with another woman. It had nothing to do with money or gambling or any of the things people assume when they hear that word. Marcus Okafor's secret was a relationship, a real, complicated, painful relationship with a 14-year-old boy named Darius Jackson, who lived in a group home 11 miles from the Okafor's house. Marcus had been mentoring Darius since the boy was 11. He'd found him sitting alone in the hallway of his school one afternoon, a bruise under his left eye, wearing shoes 2 sizes too small with the soles held together by duct tape. Marcus asked if he was okay. Darius said nothing. Marcus sat down next to him on the hallway floor and said nothing either. They sat there for 40 minutes. That was the beginning. Marcus started showing up twice a week, then 3 times, then every day after school. He helped Darius with algebra. He brought him new shoes. He drove him to the barber. He sat with him through 3 different foster home placements when each one fell apart. He attended every court hearing. He wrote 7 letters to the Department of Family and Children's Services, requesting to become Darius's official mentor through the state program. Every single request was denied. The first letter came back with a form response. Application does not meet current criteria for non-relative mentorship placement. The second was returned unopened. The third was marked insufficient documentation, even though Marcus had included every document on the checklist. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th were met with silence. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve cry. Marcus never told Grace. Not because he was ashamed of Darius. Not because he thought she would say no. He never told her because every hour he spent with that boy was an hour he wasn't spending with his own children. Every $20 he slipped into Darius's backpack, for lunch, for a winter coat, for a graphing calculator, was $20 that didn't go into the twins' college fund. Marcus carried the math of his own guilt like a stone in his chest. He told Grace he was tutoring after school. He told her the school had started a new after-hours program. He told her the principal needed extra help with standardized test prep. He lied to the woman he loved every single day for almost 3 years because he didn't know how to explain that his heart had made room for a child who wasn't his, and that the world kept telling him he had no right to be in that child's life. One night in January, Grace found Marcus sitting in his truck in the driveway at 11 o'clock at night. The engine was off. The windows were fogged. When she opened the door, his face was wet. She asked what happened. He said nothing. She asked again. He said, Bad day at work. It wasn't a bad day at work. Darius had been moved to his fourth group home in 18 months, this one 43 miles away in Macon. The caseworker told Marcus his visits were no longer logistically feasible. Marcus had driven to Macon anyway, found the group home, and been turned away at the door. He sat in that parking lot for 2 hours before driving back to Decatur. When he got home, he couldn't make himself walk inside because he didn't know how to look at his own children's faces without seeing the face of a boy he couldn't save. Hope, his 4-year-old daughter, found him the next morning asleep in the truck. She knocked on the window and said, "Mama, why do you cry when you think I'm sleeping?" She wasn't talking about herself. She was talking about her father. She'd heard him through the walls for months. Grace knew something was wrong. She knew it the way a nurse knows, not from what the patient says, but from what the body reveals. Marcus had lost 19 pounds. His hands shook when he graded papers. He stopped playing basketball with the twins on Saturday mornings. He stopped singing in the shower. He stopped laughing at his own jokes, which Grace always said was his most annoying and most beautiful habit. She checked his phone once while he slept. She found nothing, no messages, no calls, no second life. Just a browser history full of searches. How to become a foster parent in Georgia. DFCS appeal process. Rights of non-relative mentors. Can a teacher adopt a former student? Grace didn't understand what she was looking at. She printed every page and put them in a folder and waited. When the Okafor family was selected to appear on Family Feud, Grace saw something she hadn't seen in months. Marcus smiled. He laughed at dinner. He practiced answers with the twins. He bought a new tie. For 1 week, he looked like the man she married. Grace decided that whatever was happening, whatever secret was sitting between them, she would find out on that stage, in front of cameras, where Marcus couldn't run and couldn't lie. She didn't know the full story yet, but she had the folder. Steve would later call what happened next the most important moment of his career. The taping began normally. The Okafor family faced the Delgado family from Houston. They played 3 rounds. They laughed. Steve made jokes about Marcus's tie. The audience clapped. The Okafors won and went to fast money. Marcus scored 187 points. They won the $20,000. Confetti fell. The family hugged. Steve shook Marcus's hand. And then Grace walked to center stage. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for a commercial break. She took the microphone from Steve Harvey's hand, turned to her husband, and said 5 words that made the entire studio fall completely silent. "Tell them about your son." Marcus's knees buckled. His brother caught him. His mother covered her mouth. The twins looked at each other. Steve Harvey stood 3 feet away, watching a marriage crack open on his stage. Marcus couldn't speak. His mouth opened and nothing came out. Grace reached into her purse and pulled out the folder. The printed browser searches, every one of them. She held it up so Marcus could see it. "I found these 8 weeks ago," she said. "I've been waiting. Tell them about Darius." The studio fell completely silent for the second time. Marcus Okafor, a man who had kept a secret for almost 3 years, looked at his wife and said, "I didn't know how to tell you I love somebody else's child." Grace dropped the folder. She crossed the stage. She put both hands on her husband's face. And she said, "I know. I called the group home. I called DFCS. I called a lawyer. We're bringing him home." The sound that came out of Marcus Okafor was not a word. It was not a cry. It was the sound of a man who had been holding his breath for 3 years, finally letting go. He collapsed into his wife's arms on the stage of Family Feud, and Steve Harvey turned away from the camera because his own eyes were full. Steve Harvey walked to center stage. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. He didn't say anything for a long time. The producers were signaling to cut. The stage manager was pointing at the clock. Steve ignored every single one of them. He looked at Marcus and said, "Let me tell you something." The studio fell silent again. 27 years ago, Steve said, I was living in my 1976 Ford Tempo. I was showering at gas stations. I was eating whatever I could find. 3 years I lived in that car. And the thing that almost killed me wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the cold. It was the fact that I had love to give and nobody to give it to. I had children I couldn't reach. I had a purpose I couldn't fulfill. And every single night I sat in that car and I thought, I am wasting the best thing God put inside me. Steve looked at Marcus. You are not wasting it. You hear me? That boy is your son. Biology doesn't make a father. Showing up makes a father. And you showed up every single day when the system told you not to. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to his producers and said, Get me a phone. The stage manager shook her head. Steve said it again. Get me a phone, right now. In 17 years of taping Family Feud, Steve Harvey had never made a phone call during a live episode. A producer ran out with a cell phone. Steve dialed a number. He put it on speaker in front of 200 people and a camera crew who were all crying. He called the director of Fulton County Department of Family and Children's Services. This is Steve Harvey, he said. I'm standing on the stage of Family Feud right now with a man named Marcus Okafor, who has been trying to become a mentor and foster parent to a young man named Darius Jackson for almost 3 years. Your department has denied him 7 times. I need you to tell me why, and I need you to tell me what it's going to take to fix it, because I am not hanging up this phone until we have an answer. The director was silent for 4 seconds. Then she said she would personally review the case by end of business the following day. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to the Delgado family, the family that had lost. He said, You came here to win $20,000. You didn't win the game. But I want to ask you something. He looked at Maria Delgado, the matriarch. What do you think should happen here? Maria Delgado walked across the stage, took Grace's hand and said, You bring that boy home. That's all that matters. Steve looked into the camera. Everyone watching at home, every single one of you. You know somebody like Marcus. You know somebody who is loving a child that the system says isn't theirs. You know somebody who is carrying a secret because the world told them their love doesn't count. I'm telling you right now, it counts. Love don't keep no secrets. Love keeps showing up. He gave the Delgado family their own $20,000 prize. Both families won. Both families stood together on that stage and held hands while the audience rose to their feet, and the applause lasted for over 3 minutes. The clip was uploaded that night. Within 72 hours, it had been viewed 180 million times. Within a week, it crossed 300 million. The hashtag #BringDariusHome trended in 47 countries. The DFCS director called Marcus personally 2 days after the taping. The case was reopened. The foster application was approved within 3 weeks. On June 8, 2023, Darius Jackson walked into the Okafor home on Birchwood Lane in Decatur, Georgia, carrying a single backpack and wearing new shoes that fit. The Marcus and Grace Foundation was established 4 months later. In its first year, it funded legal advocacy for over 200 non-relative mentors seeking foster or adoption rights across the state of Georgia. It partnered with 11 school districts to create after-school mentorship programs that connected teachers with at-risk students. By the end of the second year, the foundation had helped place 63 children with mentors who had previously been denied by the system. Steve Harvey spoke about the Okafor family in an interview 8 months after the episode aired. He said, I've hosted this show for a long time. I've seen people win money. I've seen people lose money. But I have never seen a man stand on that stage and be terrified, not of losing, but of being seen. Marcus Okafor taught me that the bravest thing a man can do is admit that his heart is bigger than his life can hold. Marcus Okafor still teaches 8th grade math at the same school in Decatur. Grace still works the night shift at Grady Memorial. The twins, Elijah and Isaiah, are 11 now. Hope is 6. And Darius Jackson, 15 years old, living in the 3rd bedroom on Birchwood Lane, sits at the kitchen table every Sunday evening while his father grades papers and his mother packs lunches for Monday. He's learning algebra. He's wearing shoes that fit. He is home. A man sits at a kitchen table grading papers. A boy sits beside him working through equations. Neither of them speaks. Neither of them needs to. The silence between them is not empty. It is full. It is the sound of a promise kept, a system defeated, a family that chose itself into existence. Sometimes love doesn't look like what the world expects. Sometimes it looks like a man in a truck in a driveway at 11 o'clock at night, crying for a child who isn't his. Sometimes the most radical thing a person can do is simply refuse to stop showing up. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you the stories that prove love is louder than any system built to stop it.